Welcome back to Build a Web App in 2 hours. In this session, we're going to scaffold a list and detail screen, and we're going to do that for the launch sites. So when we talk about scaffolding, we're really talking about taking a piece of data, and in this case, we're going to use one of our database entities, the launch site, and using that to go ahead and create a list screen and a detail screen. So we can go into our entity, we can right-click on that entity and ask for a list screen. And it will go ahead and create a screen that is the plural, so launch site becomes launch sites. And what it does is it gives us a list of those, given some of the attributes that are inside that entity, and we'll automatically add some search and other capabilities to that screen. And then we can go back and do the same thing to launch site again, asking for the detail screen. And in this case, once we have a list screen, the list will be updated to be able to take us to the launch site detail screen. And then the launch site detail screen will be able to take us back to the regular launch site screen. And here you can see the detail screen will just list all of the different attributes and allow us to be able to update them. So let's go ahead and get started on creating these screens. Back in Service Studio, we'll go ahead and come over to the Data tab and find our launch site entity, and we had viewed the data that was put on the server. In this case, we're going to right-click that entity, and as we saw before, we'll ask for the list screen. So you can see that the stars come up and it creates the list screen, and if we reorganize this a little, we've got our Hello Planet screen, and we'll put the launch site screen right next to it over here. So let's open the launch site screen, and as we saw in the example, we get a launch site title with a search, and then we get the city, the country, the telephone, and here we get latitude. So one thing that's important to note, if I go back to the Data tab and we open launch site, you can see that in the list of information that it provides, it gives us the first 4 attributes. So it will always be the first 4 text-based attributes that it can find to go ahead and display information. So in this case, the latitude and longitude don't necessarily mean anything to us in the summary. If we wanted to see quick information about launch sites, we might want to change that. So changing these is really easy. If we go to the top center, there's some special editors that show up when we're working with tables. So in this case, if I don't need the latitude, I have this delete column icon, and I can ask it to delete the column, and now latitude is gone. And if instead of latitude, I might want to use the launch site's address to know a little bit more about where it is, I can just drag and drop into the table wherever I would like it, and then it adds address. And it continues to make all of these sortable and searchable. So that's a nice change and a quick way to edit the things that are happening inside the table. You can also see that when it added the launch site, it gave us a menu to be able to jump to this launch site page so that we can get here a little bit quicker from other parts of the site. Now if we go back to data and I right-click on launch site again, then what I can do is ask for the detail screen. And again, it takes us to the main flow and shows us the stars, saying that launch sites has been updated to go to the detail screen, and the detail screen has been created and can navigate back to launch sites. So let's double click on the detail screen. And here we can see that we're either going to get a new launch site, or it'll give us the name of the current launch site that we're looking at. And again, we have city, and for the launch site, the country, the telephone, the lat lon. But again, the address down here is at the bottom, and we might want the address to be up next to the city like we did before. So we can edit these forms and the structure of this data fairly easily as well. In this particular case, we're going to come over to the less than and greater than symbol here. That is the icon that we use for showing the widget tree. So here we're actually seeing the elements of the page, but if I want to see the internal structure of the page, I can use the widget tree. And the widget tree begins to show me the page with its layout. And then there's some stuff at the top, including the header. There's breadcrumbs areas, and then there's where we have the title. So we can see on the left it's highlighted in blue for the Boston title, but we actually want to work in the main content area. So if I expand this placeholder, it shows me that the form is inside there, and inside that form there's a container for each of the rows of the different types of data that are there. And in this particular case, this bottom one is the address, so there's one right below it that is actually the buttons. So if this one is the address and I'd like the address to be moved up, all I have to do is drag this container and we begin to see blue lines come up. And if I want to put it right below the top one, which is the name, I've moved that container up. And now you can see the address has disappeared from the bottom. And if we scroll to the top, it's right underneath the city. So that gives us a kind of quick and easy way to edit things. So let's go back to the main flow. And we can see that the detail screen can get us back to the launch sites when we save or when we finish work. And then how does launch sites get changed? So the launch sites now has a create a new launch site link at the top right here. And then now Boston and the city names have actually been created as links as well. So that's the red color showing us that they'll be able to get us to the details. So let's go ahead and publish this and see what it's going to look like. And again, if you remember, it's sending all this information to the server so it can compile the new parts of these pages. So in this particular case, it had the information from the database and it now knows it's using that data inside the screens. So it updates the SQL Server and IIS, and again, we can open our Planet Manager app. So I'm going to open it in the browser with the blue button now. And we're back to Hello Planets, just like we were for the first time. But now we have the launch site menu. And when I select the menu, it takes it a second to compile it for the first time. And here it says, oh, well, you're in the Planet Manager and you need to log in. So we didn't make these pages anonymous. So I'm going to go ahead and log in using my community ID and password. And when I log in, now it shows me as the user logged in, and it takes me back to the Hello Planets page. If I ask for launch sites, now I have access because I'm a registered user, and it shows me the launch sites and the different lists of things we have here. So if I go to the launch site that I'm closest to in Atlanta, here we can see that it's on Peachtree Dunwoody Road. And this happens to be where our office is. So I also know it should be 5901 Peachtree Dunwoody Road. And I can go ahead and save this. And it immediately takes me right back to the list, tells me things were updated, and it shows me the update inside the list. So we now have all the capabilities we need for the launch sites. Join me in the next section where we'll begin working on bringing in more information to show where the launch site is on the map.